We are pleased to welcome you, Your Excellency Stefan de Mistura, to Anwar Gargash Diplomatic Academy's Distinguished Diplomat Interview Series. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres announced His Excellency Stefan de Mistura of Italy as his personal envoy of Western Sahara. With more than 40 years on diplomacy and political affairs, His Excellency brings a wealth of experiences. During his career with the United Nations, he served as Special Envoy of the Secretary General for Syria, providing a good offices aimed at promoting a peaceful solution to the Syrian crisis. Prior appointments include Special Representative of the Secretary General for Afghanistan and for Iraq, Personal Representative of the Secretary General for Southern Lebanon, and the Director of the United Nations Information Center in Rome. He also served the organization in various posts in Somalia, Sudan, Ethiopia, Vietnam, and Lao People's Democratic Republic, among others. In addition to His Excellency's services with the United Nations, he was appointed Under-Secretary of the State for Foreign Affairs after Deputy Foreign Minister in Italy. Your Excellency, I'd like to start by thanking you for taking the time to speak with us today. It's such a great honor meeting you. My name is Dana Al-Wahibi, and I am a diplomat trainee here in Agda. So, please allow me to ask you a few questions about diplomacy into the 21st century. To start, my first question is, why does diplomacy matter, and do we still need diplomats?
First of all, great to be interviewed by you and by a student, and a lady student, because we need more and more everywhere in the world women diplomats as well. And so I'm very glad that you are in this remarkable institution. And I'm glad to share some feelings as I did today and experience. So your question is whether we really still need diplomats. And the answer is obviously yes. I know that diplomacy has changed. It's become very much high level. Ministers, presidents talk to each other. They talk via WhatsApp, by Signal or whatever. They meet in many conferences. But who prepares those meetings? And how this is done by the diplomats, who would provide information, analysis, and suggestions to their own bosses. And last but not least, you cannot replace the human diplomacy, the contact between your colleagues you will see and those you will be assigned to. So the human aspect, in spite of technology and changes in diplomacy, is still there. And the alternative would be the jungle. We can't go to that, and no one will want that.
What are the three most important characteristics, skills of a good diplomat, and which ones do they most commonly lack?
I would focus more on what are the main, most important skills, based on my own experience, and less on what they commonly lack, because it depends on the personality. We are not machines. You are not going to be a machine. You are going to be a human being, well prepared, representing the interest of your country, but at the same time playing into the international arena with other people. So everyone has his own personality, and that is what makes the diplomat human aspect important. The biggest skill, well, I would say certainly patience, daruri, is important, because things won't happen immediately. They require a lot of preparation, long discussions, waiting for the capital to reply, for the UN meeting to go through its own process. The second is languages, because of course if you do speak more than one language, it helps in having an informal discussion. Diplomats solve a lot of things around the table, but also over a coffee in preparing it. 3, open-mindedness regarding the position of the other. In other words, psychology. We may disagree, we have different opinions, but we should also understand where you come from. That will help me, you, to actually better explain the position of your own country or of the cause you are defending.
Sure. Since I'm a trainee diplomat, I had to ask this question.
Yes.
What would be your one key message to diplomats starting out on a diplomatic career?
Well, the key message would be, it is a fantastic career, remarkable job. You're serving your own country. You're serving often an international environment where you may get a common position, and above all, you continue the dialogue. You see, without diplomacy and human diplomacy, there will not be dialogue. It will just be emails or not verbals or diktats. And that is what makes it very different. That's why you need to be well prepared.
Can you share with us an example of successful diplomacy that you have witnessed, and tell us what, in your view, made it so effective?
Well, nothing is totally effective until you see the final results, and sometimes it takes many years. There are crises, as you know, that go on for 50, 60 years, and then suddenly, like on the Irish-British issue, there is an outcome, like it was on the Iraq and Iran war after, or the end of the Cold War. So, in a way, the most impressive moment, I just described it to the students a few minutes ago, was when in Syria, at a certain point, 2017, John Kerry, State Secretary of the US, and Sergei Lavrov, Russian Federation, came up with the common interest and common willingness in coming up with some type of formula that would be reducing the violence in Syria. And it took place in Geneva, and it went on for hours until midnight, and we were with them. And we saw how genuine their interest was in trying to come up with a reduction of violence. Doesn't mean peace, probably would have never been yet, but it would have made a big difference. And we got an outcome there, and it came a proposal. Then it didn't work, not because of them. Diplomacy did its job, but there were other events which then spoiled it.
You are holding and held various crucial positions in the past in multilateral setting, including being the UN Envoy to Western Sahara, the UN Special Envoy for Syria, the representative of the Secretary General in Iraq and in Afghanistan, but as well in your home country as Italy Undersecretary and Deputy Foreign Minister. What would you say was the most rewarding position you held, and which one was the most challenging one?
Well, that's a very difficult question, I must tell you. After 28 missions over 48 years, actually, in conflict areas, if I go through it, and I think honestly, each one was a most challenging and was in a way rewarding, even if we didn't get, and I didn't get results as I wished, but because I believe we did try and often made some difference. So each one was challenging, including the first and the last one, because they're all different, totally different, and certainly at that moment when they took place, think about Syria conflict, think about the Iraq or the Afghanistan moments, or the Balkans period, or Ethiopia, Somalia, and the issue. They were at that time, in fact, the most crucial one in the attention of the international community. That's why the UN was involved. So I don't have a clear answer because they were all rewarding to a certain degree, frustrating sometimes as well, but always worth it.
To follow up on that question, we noticed that when conflicts are going on for a longer time, we detect a certain sense of fatigue within the international community.
Yeah.
What is your strategy to keep a conflict high on the international community agenda?
First of all, to make sure that the world attention, the international community pays attention to the crisis. The worst case scenario is when a war or a conflict or a difficult, complex environment is forgotten because considered too complicated, too difficult, and therefore the people affected by it are forgotten. That is something that we need, and that's been like the light of this light there, we need to have the zoom on it, the laser beam on it. And the UN, I must say, can help a lot by raising the concern. The other aspect is, frankly, that when you are involved in it, you, at least I, that's my formula, never totally give up, even if it is very complicated and frustrating, and when there is donor fatigue. Because I wanted, as I told the students, originally become a doctor, and a doctor never leaves his patient, even if the case looks desperate.
My last question is, what do you think has mainly changed for young diplomats in the last decade? What must one pay more attention to? Or do you believe that many things have remained the same?
Diplomacy has basically remained the same, which is the need of a dialogue among different countries using diplomats as a conduit. And that from the time of the Roman Empire or the Chinese Empire is not changed. There were ambassadors from Venice which were going to Beijing many years ago, as you know, Marco Polo. They were de facto an ambassador. And they were communicating. The moment you have dialogue, you still have a line of communication, which is basically the mother of diplomacy. And what has changed is the multipolar world. It used to be paradoxically simpler, if you want, and at the same time very dangerous, when the world was divided in two areas, the East and the West. Soviet Union, Warsaw Pact, NATO. But it was also paralyzing the Security Council. We are in the multipolar world today. No country alone, superpower not, can solve issues that can be only solved by working together. And secondly, there are many countries, including this country, who have rightly their own opinion, their own national way of presenting that opinion. That makes it much more interesting for diplomacy because it's much more varied, but requires more work. Why not?
Your Excellency, thank you so much.
Can I say good luck to you and your colleagues, students?
Thank you so much. It's been a great pleasure meeting you.
أهلا وسهلا، فرصة سعيدة.